The fragile calm of a Tel Aviv afternoon was shattered by a devastating attack on the bustling Hatta market. This was not a distant military outpost, but a place where life unfolds in its most ordinary and vibrant forms. Vendors calling out their prices, families shopping for their evening meals, and friends gathering over coffee. The coordinated assault involving multiple explosions and gunfire ripped through this civilian heartland, leaving a trail of chaos and profound sorrow. The scenes that followed were heart-wrenching, with emergency services navigating through debris and confusion to reach the wounded. The attack struck a deep and painful nerve within the Israeli public, transforming a space of community and commerce into a symbol of vulnerability and national grief. The immediate aftermath was filled with a mixture of shock, anger, and a desperate search for answers. For Israelis, an attack on a civilian center like Hatta Market is more than just a security breach. It is an assault on their very way of life and the sense of normalcy they strive to maintain amidst regional tensions. The public outcry was immense, with citizens demanding swift and decisive action from their government. The attack dominated every news broadcast and conversation, the raw emotions fueling a collective demand for retribution against those responsible. This was not a skirmish on a faraway border. It was an intimate violation that brought the conflict directly into the homes and hearts of ordinary people, hardening resolve and setting the stage for a powerful response. The nature of the Hatta market attack suggested a high level of planning and coordination, hallmarks often associated with well-funded and organized militant groups. Israeli intelligence agencies immediately began the painstaking work of piecing together the evidence, analyzing forensic data, and reviewing surveillance footage. The sophistication of the explosives, the tactical execution of the gunmen, and the choice of a high-profile civilian target all pointed away from a lone wolf incident. Instead, it bore the signature of a state-sponsored operation, designed to inflict maximum psychological damage and provoke a significant reaction. The question on everyone's mind was not just who pulled the trigger, but who provided the training, the funding, and the strategic direction for such a brazen act. This single event has acted as a powerful accelerant on the long-simmering fire between Israel and its adversaries. The attack on Hatta Market was not just another tragic headline in a region accustomed to conflict. It felt different, more personal, and more dangerous. It has pushed the Israeli government into a corner where a lack of a forceful response could be perceived as weakness, both domestically and by its enemies. The public's anger has created immense political pressure, demanding a reply that goes beyond the usual retaliatory airstrikes. The attack has therefore become a critical inflection point, a moment that threatens to drag the entire region from a state of contained hostility into a new and unpredictable phase of open confrontation. In a stark departure from its usual strategic communications, Israel issued a warning that was chilling in its directness and scope. Instead of addressing Iran's supreme leader or the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, Israeli officials broadcast a message aimed squarely at the ordinary citizens of Tehran. The message, disseminated through social media, satellite channels, and digital leaflets, warned the people of Iran's capital that their daily lives could be profoundly disrupted. It spoke of the potential for severe consequences not just for their leaders, but for the civilian population itself. This was a deliberate and calculated shift in rhetoric, moving beyond the language of military targets to the unsettling realm of collective accountability, a message designed to be heard in the cafes and homes of Tehran. This new approach represents a significant and alarming escalation. Historically, even during periods of high tension, Israeli threats have been focused on military assets, nuclear facilities, or the leadership responsible for aggression. The unspoken rule was that the conflict remained between states and their armed apparatuses. By explicitly addressing the Iranian populace and warning them of direct consequences, Israel is signaling that this unspoken rule may no longer apply. It is a form of psychological warfare intended to create a wedge between the Iranian people and their government, suggesting that the regime's actions could bring ruin not just to its soldiers, but to its cities and the civilians who inhabit them, a truly perilous crossing of a long-held red line. The underlying logic of this threat is to make the cost of supporting anti-Israel proxies prohibitively high for the Iranian regime. The Israeli calculation appears to be that if the citizens of Tehran begin to fear for their own safety and stability, they might exert internal pressure on their leaders to de-escalate. The warning essentially tells the Iranian people, your government's foreign policy is now a direct threat to your personal security. This strategy, however, is fraught with risk. It could backfire spectacularly, uniting the Iranian people against a common foreign threat, and bolstering the regime's narrative that it is the sole protector of the nation against an aggressive and hostile enemy, thereby strengthening the very leadership Israel seeks to undermine. The message to Tehran's residents is therefore much more than just words. It is a fundamental change in the rules of engagement in the Middle East's shadow war. It suggests a future where the distinction between combatant and non-combatant becomes dangerously blurred. This shift moves the conflict from the shadows into the spotlight, and from the battlefield into the city square. The world is now watching to see if this is merely a bluff designed to deter further attacks, or the prelude to a new and more devastating chapter in the long and bitter rivalry between Israel and Iran. The warning has created a tense and uncertain atmosphere, where the next move by either side could have catastrophic and far-reaching consequences for millions. Israel's immediate and forceful accusation against Iran is rooted in a long and well-documented history of proxy warfare. For decades, Iran has cultivated a network of allied militant groups across the Middle East, from Hezbollah in Lebanon to Hamas and Islamic Jihad in the Palestinian territories. This axis of resistance allows Iran to project power and challenge its adversaries, particularly Israel and the United States, without engaging in direct state-to-state conflict. Israel pointed to this established pattern, arguing that the sophistication and audacity of the Hatta market attack were consistent with the capabilities of an Iran-backed group. Israeli intelligence sources claim to have intercepted communications and found forensic links tying the perpetrators to training and funding originating from Tehran, solidifying their public case for Iranian culpability. The danger of targeting civilians, as implied in Israel's warning to Tehran, is profound and extends into the realm of international law. The Geneva Conventions and other pillars of international humanitarian law establish a clear principle of distinction, which requires warring parties to differentiate between military objectives and civilian populations. Deliberately targeting civilians or civilian infrastructure constitutes a war crime. While Israel framed its message as a warning, any military action that followed through on such a threat would inevitably be scrutinized and condemned on the global stage. This legal and ethical boundary is a cornerstone of the modern laws of war, designed precisely to prevent the kind of total warfare that would make conflicts unimaginably brutal and destructive for all involved. Crossing this line carries immense strategic risks for Israel. While intended to deter Iran, threatening a civilian population could isolate Israel from its key allies, including the United States and European nations. These countries provide crucial diplomatic, financial, and military support, which is often conditioned on adherence to international norms. An action perceived as collective punishment against the Iranian people would erode this vital support, leaving Israel more vulnerable. Furthermore, it would provide a powerful propaganda victory for the Iranian regime, which could then portray itself as the victim of indiscriminate aggression, rallying both domestic and international sympathy to its cause, and further entrenching its hardline stance against any form of compromise or negotiation. This escalation, therefore, pushes the long-running shadow war into a perilous new phase. What was once a conflict fought through proxies, cyber attacks, and targeted assassinations now threatens to erupt into direct and open warfare between the two regional powers. The implicit threat against civilians breaks the unwritten rules that have, for the most part, contained the conflict. By raising the stakes to this level, Israel is gambling that the threat alone will be enough to force a change in Iranian behavior. However, it is a gamble that could easily fail, potentially triggering a retaliatory cycle that would be difficult to control, and could quickly spiral into a wider, more devastating regional conflagration. The escalating threats between Israel and Iran have implications that resonate far beyond their borders, placing the entire Middle East on a knife's edge. A direct military conflict would inevitably draw in other nations and actors. Iran's proxies, such as Hezbollah in Lebanon and militias in Syria and Iraq, would almost certainly activate, opening multiple fronts against Israel. In response, Israel's allies, most notably the United States, would be under immense pressure to intervene. This could quickly create a domino effect, pulling in Gulf Arab states who view Iran as a primary threat, potentially igniting a regional war with multiple complex battlefields and catastrophic humanitarian consequences. For the rest of the world, the stakes are incredibly high, primarily because of the global economy's dependence on Middle East energy resources. The Strait of Hormuz, a narrow waterway through which a significant portion of the world's oil supply passes, is controlled by Iran. In any major conflict, Iran would almost certainly attempt to close or disrupt shipping in this critical choke point. The result would be an immediate and dramatic spike in global oil prices, triggering a worldwide economic crisis. Supply chains would be shattered, inflation would soar, and economies could be pushed into a deep recession. The economic shockwaves would be felt in every country, affecting fuel, food, and everyday goods for billions of people. Beyond the economic fallout, a major war would likely spark a massive refugee crisis. Millions could be displaced from their homes in Iran, Israel, Lebanon, and surrounding nations. This would place overwhelming strain on humanitarian organizations and host countries, particularly in Europe. The political and social stability of the entire region could unravel, creating power vacuums exploited by extremist groups, leading to a resurgence of terrorism with global reach. As the world holds its breath, several key developments must be watched closely. The first is definitive attribution for the Tel Aviv-Hatta attack. If credible intelligence confirms a different perpetrator, it could dramatically alter the diplomatic landscape. Secondly, the response of major world powers, especially the United States, Russia, and China, will be critical. Intense diplomatic intervention could de-escalate the crisis, while a hesitant response could embolden the aggressors. Finally, the actions of Iran itself will be paramount. Whether it doubles down through proxies or seeks an off-ramp will determine if the region steps back from the brink or tumbles into catastrophic war with global consequences.